the opportunity to go on just a little bit of a trip, and it was a real blessing for us to end this last week of summer, just as a family, joined together, taking a trip. And originally the trip was going to be, 3 baseball games, and it was going to be all about Dad, because he wanted to go to Minnesota, then Chicago, then Milwaukee, see 3 Braves games at 3 stadiums. And then the Lord started to churn my heart that as a godly man, I should give the kids at least one of the 3 days of our trips to where they can have some fun. And so we went to a water park, and I'm glad Logan's not in here because I wouldn't want to embarrass him with this story. But we went to a water park, and I know this is going to come as a shock to you guys, so just hold your shocked faces. But I'm kind of a big guy. Okay, I have a love-hate relationship with water parks. I know, thank you. When you see that little number 250 there, you think about high school. And I'm like, well, I'm a little past that, right? So can't ride that slide. And Logan, he's just a boy that wants to ride everything. And I'm like, hey son, can't do that one. Like, you can, go right ahead. Well, there was one slide in the whole water park that didn't have a weight limit on it. And I was like, all right, we're going to ride this slide, okay? And I don't know if you guys have been to a water park lately, but I'll tell you what, water parks are the absolute worst thing to ride rides on, because the whole purpose of a water park is apparently just to get steps in. Because you walk up a set of steps, you turn, you walk up another set of steps, you turn, walk up another, and you do this for what seems like infinitely long. I swear by the time I made it to the top of the steps, guys, like I was almost face to face with Jesus. Like I felt like I was at the top of the Tower of Babel, and I could realize that God had to strike it down. It was 100 steps, probably more than 100 steps, just to go on a 4-minute thrill ride. And I'll tell you, it was a thrill ride. I got on it, and I could tell that there's a difference in size between Logan and I, because he got on his little board, and he just jumped down the slide, and he just whipped down it. I jumped on the slide and just kind of stopped, okay? And so I had to do a little wiggle to let some water get under the board, and then I took off sliding down this slide. And I go down the slide, and I'm like, whoa, we're going way faster than I thought we were going to go. And then it had a little bow to the right, and then it whipped you hard left and brought you back a whole 180. And I know from physics that's to get some centrifugal force going. That way the speed gets going up. I hit the end of this slide, and what I can only picture the kid looking down as this slide giving birth to me, and he's realizing that this baby's really big. I come out this slide, and I feel like I'm going at terminal velocity. I feel like you can see the water pellets vaporizing off of me. I hit the slide, go down, gain even more speed, and as I get to the slide where it starts to go flat, and I think it's supposed to slow me down, it's not slowing me down. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. I was like, I got to make a business decision. Do I roll into the middle lane, and maybe there's an unsuspecting kid there that knows what it's like to get out of lane in a NASCAR race and get smoked into a wall? Do I roll the other way and just take the road rash, just ride the concrete down and say, hey, I did it once? And I just decided to trust the process, and all of a sudden, there's this big pool of water at the end of this thing, and I hit this thing, boom, kids like 50 feet away over in the children's area thought there was a tsunami coming over them. They're like, I thought it was an indoor water park. It feels like it started raining. I mean, it was traumatic for me, church, okay? I can't believe you would laugh at this story. I felt like I was about to lose my life. But I tell this story to get a laugh out of you guys, because the whole time, as I'm getting up, and the little lifeguard guy is still trying to get his eyes back in his head, because I think we both wondered if I was making it all the way to the wall. I got up and I said, son, I thought I was going to be sitting right in your lap. I was like, I didn't know how that one was going to turn out. It felt like I was on Christmas Vacation, National Lampoon, where they had the sled that got going too fast and ended up in that Walmart parking lot. I thought I was just taking supper at the Cracker Barrel across the road. I was like, I'll just stay for some turnip greens. But I tell that story for a purpose, not just to get a laugh out of you or to entertain you, but because sometimes in our lives, we get on these journeys and it feels like it's going fast and everything's changing and we don't know what to expect. and we just got to trust the process. Sometimes you just got to stay on the ride and trust that if they didn't put a weight limit on it, they probably had someone bigger than you ride the ride before, and there's a way that they're going to slow you down. There's a way they're going to stop you, and you got to trust the process. I know in the church right now, even for me, it feels like we're on hyperspeed. We're starting ministries, we're growing, people are visiting us. The children's church is blowing and going, and I checked out the curriculum that Kelsey's going to be teaching our kids, and she's going to be taking them through everything from creation to corruption to God starting to clean things up and promising Jesus, all the way to Revelation in the next 10 weeks, talking about someday we will be in heaven, joined with God, and everything will be perfect again. We'll make it back to Eden. And church, we are doing so many tremendous things right now. And yet at the same time, it can be so scary on the ride because it feels like we're going super fast and we don't know how this thing's going to turn out. And you're going to see this. I bought some shirts that have this on it as a pocket logo for myself so that when I go out into the community, I can have kind of a little branding for us and people can start being familiar with what we're doing. This is our church motto that's on our bulletin every week. It's just simplified down to 3 main words. Everything we're doing as a church, we are seeking the lost, we are strengthening the church through faith and fellowship, those who are already in the church, and we are looking for needs to serve. Everything we are doing has been simplified down to these 3 points. And we just trust the process. When everything we do falls under one of 3 categories. And this is something you guys have been doing since the inception of this church. And what I want to do in this season of the church, is just become people that it's not just a vision statement, it's not just a mission statement, it becomes what we do intentionally. I just want to make sure that we are actually living out what we claim we want to do. Seek people, strengthen people, serve one another, becoming who we claim to be. And I know I switched these 2 words. I took a little bit of pastoral liberty. It used to be serve and strengthen, but the threefold process works better. It strengthens the last word. It actually makes a better diagram that we can look at later on. But you're going to see this a lot on stuff that I'm wearing because church is who we are. We're a simple church full of simple people who love Jesus and want to seek, strengthen, and serve. Really simple stuff. And so I just gave you guys that little story free of charge. This is not even necessarily in the sermon. We got a whole sermon to get through today too, full of more life stories. Not as great as that one, but not many will be for me. But this morning we want to look at casting your net. This last parable in church, I have to tell you guys, as we get to this last parable, next week we will just have an application point, maybe the shortest sermon I've preached in the entire church. Come and see if I'm right or wrong about that. But I am so glad to be done with parables, only because I have learned these narratives are really hard for me to preach because there's a lot of freedom in preaching them. I like books of the Bible that are pretty cut and dry, black and white, and you just go verse by verse, and it's just really, really clear to exposit. I've learned I'm not as good at figuring out exactly what God wants to teach me when we're going through these more parables or stories. So, last one here, and it's Matthew chapter 13, verses 47 through 50. It may be the last one. I think it may be one of the most important ones that we have, and one that if we get this right, church, we're going to do great things. And so it reads, "Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a large net thrown into the sea. It collected every kind of fish, and when it was full, they dragged it ashore, sat down, and gathered the good fish into containers, but threw out the worthless ones. So it will be at the end of the age. The angels will go out, separate the evil people from the righteous, and throw them into the blazing furnace, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." And so we see that word again, and I wondered why that that word was there. All these parables sum up the exact same message. We have done the exact same thing for 2 months now. It is all about trusting the process, taking what God gives you, being grateful for what God gives you, and Jesus really telling the same message 6 or 7 different ways. And isn't that a testimony of what we need as people, church? Isn't it amazing as a parent, you get up every single day, and what do? You do the same thing you did the day before, right? Please don't get in the refrigerator without mom and dad. Hey, if you do get in the refrigerator because you're disobedient, can you at least have the common courtesy to shut it? Because I already don't like buying milk, and I don't want to buy milk because you spoiled another gallon. Okay, we don't need more cottage cheese in this house. Right? Parenting is just getting up and doing the same thing over and over and hoping you see small changes. And that one day you look back and you go, hey, it all worked out. I guess we got it right more often than we got it wrong. That's parenting in a nutshell. At least what I've learned from having a 14, 5, 4, and 2-year-old is it doesn't change a whole lot day to day. And so, exact same thing with us. God has to tell us the same thing over and over. This whole book comes down to one theme, one message. You're never going to be able to get it right. Trust that Jesus did for you. That's the whole theme of this book. That's why no one in this church is higher or lower than anybody else. We are all co-workers in the same gospel mission, because the only person who actually deserves to be able to come in this church and have a seat of righteousness is Jesus, and he hasn't chose to come back yet. The rest of us, we are workers doing the best we can to figure this stuff out. And so let's look at our 3 points from this passage today. And the first one starts with the net seeks to catch every type of fish. That word every goes in your note sheet. And I think many times when we think about fishing, because Jesus told some of his disciples to be fishers of men because they were fishermen, and he said, I'm going to take what you're doing for work and I'm going to make you gospel-oriented fishers. I think sometimes when we think of fishing, we think of getting the pole out of the garage and going out and just casting the thing one at a time, bringing fish in, cast it out again. If you're Logan, you find lots of snags and you understand, you start to learn that fishing's an expensive game to play. All right, don't fish if you don't want to lose tackle. Okay, you're going to get snagged. You're going to break poles. It's going to happen. It's part of the gig. It's part of the fun and excitement of what us men do. But you get there and you just cast out, and unless you have one of those really weird Alabama rigs that have a whole school of fish on it that you're dragging, very rarely do you catch more than one fish at a time. However, what Jesus would have been teaching here would have been fishing during that time in the Mediterranean area, which would have been casting out a net, letting that net sink, pulling it up and trying to trap fish inside of it. So the net is this really wide net, and when you're using a net, you really don't care what you catch. You're just trying to catch something. You'll deal with the mess of sorting it out later. You're worried about quantity over quality. And so when Jesus sits here and he says you cast out a very wide net for every type of fish, he's talking about you may catch every type of fish. And you're not worried about that. Your job is to get them in the net, get them to shore, and deal with them at that point. Church, we are called to cast a very wide net and just take whatever ends up in that net as though God put it in that net. Sometimes I think we look and we go, man, that person I need to target, or that person I need to target. And we start thinking we're fishing with poles, and what God is really calling us to do is he's calling us just to cast a big net and trust whatever's in the net is what's meant to be in the net. And this is really hard for the church, because what if what comes into the net and what fills this pew isn't what we thought was going to fill this pew? What if what fills these pews and fills the net isn't what's ever filled the net before? Well, that's got to be a risk you're willing to take if you're doing the Lord's work, is that your job is to go into the place where you're going and just cast your net far and wide and just be the light of the world. And then whoever's drawn to you, you trust that God's drawing them to you, even if it don't make any sense at all. It's just the cold, hard reality of how Jesus works. And church, this is what the early church didn't like. This is what the Pharisees didn't like. They didn't like teachings like this because they wanted to keep a certain level of purity, a certain level of control over who could and could not be included, because then they could control the masses. And Jesus blows up everything the Pharisees do by calling 12 disciples who are radically different than anything a Pharisee could ever be. And so we see the proof of what Jesus is doing here in his own ministry, that he takes fishermen, zealots, tax collectors. He takes people that should be absolutely the last people to have a say in how the gospel mission is carried out, and he puts them at the forefront of it. And this is so radical that when Jesus ascends to heaven, Peter and John are going around discipling people, and the Pharisees, who should be their brothers in Christ, are stoning them and imprisoning them and saying, hey, shut up. Quit talking. You don't belong. So much so that this guy named Gamaliel starts to go, I think we need to back off a little bit. I think you beat these boys enough that if this isn't real, they're really unintelligent. I don't think you can beat sense into them. I hope nobody in here's ever had a kid like that, where you've tried every measure and nothing's changed them, and you eventually just got to surrender and go, hey, they're just going to have to figure some stuff out on their own. But that's where Gamaliel gets to. He's like, hey guys, we have done everything we can to stop them. Maybe we need to take a step back and just trust God, because if these guys are doing something from God, it can't be stopped. But if what these guys are doing is from man, it can't succeed. And so sometimes in the church, we forget, we just got to trust if it's from God, we can't stop it. But if it's man-made, it won't succeed. That's kind of where I'm at with all these ministries that I'm proposing, church. When we talk about Ferncliff Kids and restarting that Awana type thing, if it's from God, nobody in this church will be able to stop it, nor will we want to stop it. It'll blow up and it'll be huge. If this is a man-made thing, we're not supposed to reach the community with it. No matter how hard we try, it'll be like running into a brick wall. Right? Our job is to walk in faith. Our job is to see opportunities to serve, walk forward. If it's from God, it'll get a righteous blessing. If it's not from God, he'll halt it. And he has the power to halt, and he has the power to bless. And so the first message here is we got to be willing to take whatever swims into our net. And it may look radically different, but we don't have a place to really say who can and cannot be here and serve God and be a part of the church. So no politics, no judgment, just embracing whoever God sends to be a part of the church. And this fulfills the all nations part of the Great Commission. When Jesus said, go therefore into all nations, he didn't say all nations that don't eat people. And then you don't have to go and become one of the missionaries that get eaten. And then half the people are like, why would that guy come get eaten? Maybe God's real, and then the whole thing gets evangelized. Because church, that really did happen. The church outside of America can be a crazy place. So we take everyone, all nations, whoever wants to swim into the net, we figure they're drawn by God. The second point of this is that when the net is full, it is dragged in. Once the Great Commission is fully done, the net will be dragged in. This actually kind of stopped me in my tracks when I was studying this passage, because sometimes I think it's my job to drag the net in. Sometimes I think I need to drag the net in and take a look at how many fish are here. No, the net is at the end of the age. It gets dragged in and sorted. Church, as long as there is empty pews here and Jesus hasn't returned, we're still filling a net. We're still focused on going and seeking the lost. We're still trying to find fish that are supposed to be in that net drawn in. We are never in our lifetime going to see the part where the net's drug in. if we do, then the rapture is true, and we've been raptured to heaven, and we're standing at the feet of Jesus being sorted out. And then fingers crossed, we're like, hey, I hope I make the good side, right? No, just kidding. If you love Jesus, he died on the cross for you, you're on the good side. I don't want anybody leaving here without any gospel assurance, but until the net is full. And so we're seeking to fill the net every single moment of our life until God calls us home. There is no retirement. There is no retirement in the church. Even if one day I serve this church faithfully, and I step down and say, hey, I kind of want one of those cool plaques like you gave Pastor Dave. I'm still supposed to be seeking people, right? And then Pastor Dave does a wonderful job of that, because most of the time he still leads our men's breakfast on Tuesdays. Every opportunity he gets, he still serves in the church. He still serves people. He's still praying for people. He's still a gospel member. Just because he's not Pastor Dave in this church anymore, he hasn't given up his ministry at all. There's no retirement in the church. If there is still people to seek, and we still have breath in our lungs, we are still being used for the gospel. There is no retirement. There is no move to Florida and just play golf every day and live out the last few years of your life feeling comfortable. If God gives you breath in your lungs, he wants you reaching somebody. Church, I will tell you this, and I try to model it for you guys. No matter what time of day it is, no matter where I'm at, 24/7, I am your pastor. I don't care if I'm on a trip. I don't care if I'm somewhere in the middle of a date. If something happens in your life and you need your pastor, you make the phone call, right? I'm never not the pastor of this church just because I go out of town or just because I'm at a football game. Church, I am always the pastor 24/7. If there's breath in my lungs, I'm your pastor. And so I try to model this for you guys so you're not thinking, here we go, more expectations. No, we're all in the same boat. In church, there are some people that you guys are going to drag in. They're going to be in the net. And they're going to call you. And you're going to go, I think you should talk to the pastor. And they're like, no, I want to talk to you. And at that point, you will minister to people. I mean, Miss Barb, I give her a hard time all the time, only because, look, she's running Bible studies. She's pouring into people all the time. She is living by the example that I hope, if I reach her age, that I can live out. That I am still as much a godly person at the end of my life as I am at 30 years old in my life, right? That's what I'm looking up to. That's why I give her a hard time, because she's living it out. You know, I'm only 34. I'm still young. I recover well for the most part. It is a little bit harder than it was at 24, but we're still good. But church, there's never retirement. The net's not full yet. It's not being drug in, and that leads us to this third point, that the fish are sorted at the end of the age. And it says here that the angels will sort the fish out. Church, I hope we can get this right, because I know I struggle with this at times. And I struggle with this as a parent. I'm not always the best at letting God do what God's trying to do. Sometimes with my kids, I step in a moment too early, when if I would have stood back one more moment, they were just about to be convicted and change on their own. And I jump in there and just drop the hammer as a dad, and I say, that's not how crosses do things. That's not how we operate in this house. And if I would have just took a deep breath and said, hey, why don't you give me some space, I give you some space, because I don't want to yell at you and you don't want to be yelled at by me. Why don't we give each other space and come and talk in 5 minutes? That sometimes they come back and they're like, you know what, Dad, I really messed up. And it was only 3 minutes later. And I was like, you know what, kid, I was about to really mess up too. I was about to blow up because I'm at my wit's end over stuff that you're just being a 5-year-old. Right? And I hope that as a church we can get this right, that we don't have the ability to sort fish. There is not a person in this church, and if you leave with no message today other than this one, there is no one in this church who knows what's going on in another person's life. And it can be really easy as a church to step out and say, I think we got to discipline here. Or, hey, I think we got to have a conversation here. Or, oh, you're not living up to expectations here. And it can be really easy to do that because we think we're helping. But there's not a person in this church, especially me, that can look into someone's life and know what God's trying to do in their life. The people who have helped me become Pastor Roger are the ones that have looked me in the eyes and said, you know what, I don't think you're on the right path, but you and God have to figure out what the right path is. So we're going to choose to pray for you, love you, we're here for you. We're not going to sugarcoat it. We don't think you're going down the right way. And biblically, we think we have grounds, but you're going to have to work this out with God. Church, no one in here knows what God's doing. No one in here knows what God's doing in a person's life. And I don't know about you, because I don't know a lot of your testimonies. We're still getting to know each other. But I saw God take someone who was smart enough to be the pastor, who was funny enough to be the pastor. Nobody said amen, so we're still working on that, I guess. But I had all the ability to lead. I've coached at every level and I've won at every level. I have the ability to lead. I'm stubborn enough to see things through, right? But man, I was nowhere able to model for a church what it meant to be a pastor. I had all the knowledge of this. And God in the last year has taken me on a journey to even become remotely something that I feel like is growing for you guys. And I look forward to 5 years from now, not because I want my life to fly by or my kids to grow up, but I look forward to the wisdom He's going to show me in 5 years so that I realize how dumb I was sitting here preaching to you today, right? But God changed me radically. God changed the whole course of my life. Just me and Him. Me and Him. Hard conversations, a lot of conviction. He changed me. And if the church would have gave up on me or God would have gave up on me, I couldn't even walk in the blessings I have today. I'm almost at tears every time I get to be your pastor because of how great it is to serve this place. And I can't believe this is real life. I pinch myself every day. I'm going to come in here with bruises. You guys are going to think Kelsey's beating me because of how much I pinch myself and how great my life is. In church, none of it would have happened if God wouldn't have took me on a long road, a long process to humble a stubborn man like me. There are people who will sit in these pews that will look like the last thing that God will ever do something with. And mark my words, within 5 years, we will look and go, I'm so glad he's on my team. You know how I know that, church? Because I get to stand here. And truth be told, the only reason I accepted the invitation to preach at Old Threshers is because I am praying that God brings me Roger from 15 years ago. I'm praying, it's not 15, it'd be 13. I am praying that God brings me one young man sitting in those chairs that thinks that the glory of Old Threshers is to drink as much beer as possible in the campgrounds, come up and dance and act like a buffoon because that's what 21-year-olds are supposed to do, and that just one little Roger can be sitting out there. And I can say, man, if you gave your life to God, He would change everything about you, and you wouldn't even be able to believe what your life could become. That's why I took the opportunity to preach at Old Threshers, is because I'm hoping God puts just one person out there who can be reached that, hey, this doesn't have to be a party. The real party is when you know Christ. The real party is the peace that surpasses understanding, that you are loved by God and you can be exactly who you're created to be, and that's perfectly fine. You can be a Jesus freak just like I am, and you don't have to do what everybody else has to do. Because, church, I truly believe that these pews are going to be filled again. I truly believe it. I truly believe that little Wednesday night thing that may just start out with Stopper and Pross kids in it and a little wolf boy, right? It may just start out with us, and we're going to have the time of our life. But I bet there's kids that when they realize that there's a place that they can come where your last name doesn't matter, where politics aren't a thing, where everybody is loved, everybody is welcomed, I bet people start pouring in and going, you know what, this is a breath of fresh air. Just for my kids to be loved, for my kids to be led to Jesus and to be told that they matter, that there's so much more to life There's so much more to life than just what you can put on a football field, a mat, or a report card. That they are known by name by the Lord Jesus Christ. And you know what? I think there's going to be a time where we're going to get some messy people in here. And we're going to love them. And we're going to lead them to Christ. And you know what our blessing will be? Watching how the Lord uses them. It's not going to be easy, church. A lot of times we're going to have to get out of the way and just trust God. But we know at the end of the age, the angels, the ones who God has given the discernment to know who is saved and who is not saved, we're going to leave the judgment to them. We're going to leave it to the ones who discern. We're just going to love people. If it ever comes to the point where there is obviously a morality issue that could affect something in this church, maybe we'll cross the bridge and we'll take care of it. But we will have to be certain. We will have to be certain that God is not working in that person, and they are a hindrance to what we are trying to accomplish. Church, I'm going to invite Ms. Barb to come forward for our invitation. Church, let's cast a wide net. Let's cast a wide net. And let's just see what God does. Let's love the fish He puts in that net. And let's believe that we have a redeeming and restoring and reconciling